I saw the fear in my daughter's eyes.
She is simply being guided toward expectations you never prepared her for.
Expectations?
The sound hit me first. A frantic, rhythmic scrubbing coming from the heart of the house. A sound of pure, raw desperation that was utterly, fundamentally wrong for a place this magnificent. It was a sound that belonged to a tenement, to a back-alley kitchen where hope went to die, not to a multi-million-dollar estate in Portland's most exclusive neighborhood. As it wound its way through the sun-drenched, tree-lined streets of Portland, I'd pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, a tremor in my hands I couldn't seem to still, a fine, buzzing vibration of nerves and anticipation. 10 years. Early 50s, sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, and a well-earned reputation as a legal predator who never ever lost. Eleanor. He set down his briefcase, his gaze taking in the room, the feast, my tear-stained face. It's been a while. Marcus, thank you for coming so quickly. I know it's late. His gaze shifted to Clara, who was hugging the robe tighter around herself, and his expression softened with professional empathy. This must be your daughter. Clara, this is Marcus. He's going to help us. Help us how? She asked, her voice barely audible. Marcus sat down at the dining table, not crowding her, speaking gently but with an air of absolute competence. I'm an attorney, Clara. I specialize in cases of coercive control, domestic abuse, and contract fraud. Your mother gave me the barest outline over the phone, but for what comes next, I need to hear it all from you. For the next 2 hours, Clara talked, and Marcus filled a yellow legal pad with meticulous, dense notes. He asked precise, targeted questions, but mostly he just listened, his expression growing grimmer with every detail. Okay, he said finally, closing his pen with a soft click. His face was a mask of controlled fury. First, the prenup. If you were drugged and your symptoms of memory loss and disorientation strongly suggest you were, that's textbook fraudulent inducement. The entire agreement is voidable. Can we prove it? I asked, my heart pounding. Perhaps. Certain date rape drugs like Rohypnol can be detected in hair follicles for months, even years after ingestion. We need to get Clara tested. Tonight. He made a sharp note on his pad. Second, the asset transfers and power of attorney documents were all obtained under extreme duress and likely fraud. We will challenge and overturn every single one of them. How long will that take? I asked. Months? Maybe a year? But we will immediately file for an emergency injunction to freeze all their relevant assets. Carter won't be able to touch a dime of Clara's money starting tomorrow morning. Clara looked at him, a fragile, unbelievable hope dawning in her exhausted eyes. This is really possible? It's not just possible, Clara. It's probable, Marcus said, his voice firm and reassuring. But you need to understand something very clearly. Once we fire the first shot, the Sterlings will declare all-out war. They will use their money and their influence to try and crush you. They will lie. They will dredge up anything from your past. They will try to paint you as an unstable, gold-digging liar. I don't care, Clara said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it yet. They took 5 years of my life. They almost took all of it. I want them to pay. A slow, appreciative smile spread across Marcus's face. Good. Because we're not just going to make them pay. We're going to dismantle their entire empire. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Dr. Reed, it's Marcus Thorne. I need a full forensic medical exam tonight at the Benson. Full photo documentation of all injuries, hair follicle test for toxicology, blood work, the works. He listened for a moment. Yes, it's that kind of case. The highest priority. He hung up. A forensic medical examiner who specializes in abuse cases is on her way. She'll document every bruise, every scar. Everything will be court-admissible evidence. What else? I asked, feeling the tide begin to turn. We need digital evidence, texts, emails, photos from social media. I have a tech team that can recover deleted data from cloud backups, servers, you name it. I had one, Clara said, her eyes lighting up with a sudden memory. An entire decade since I'd last held my daughter, since I'd felt the warmth of her hug, since I'd seen her smile without a pixelated, time-delayed screen between us. The guilt was a physical weight, a stone pressing down on my lungs, making each breath a conscious, painful effort. I had missed birthdays. I had missed holidays. Before they took my phone away and gave me a new one with a family plan, everything was synced to my old iCloud account. I never deleted it. Perfect, Marcus said, his smile turning wolfish. An hour later, Dr. Evelyn Reed arrived. She had kind eyes and gentle, competent hands, and she explained every step of the exam to Clara with a quiet compassion that put her immediately at ease. While they were in this bedroom, Marcus and I stood by the window, watching the city lights twinkle below like a fallen constellation. "How bad is it, Eleanor?" he asked quietly, his professional demeanor slipping for a moment. "Worse than I can describe. They treated her like an animal, Marcus. They branded her." His jaw tightened. "The Sterlings have been untouchable in this town for a long time. They have judges in their pocket, the chief of police on their holiday card list. This is going to be the fight of our lives." "Good thing I've always loved a good fight," I said, my voice hard as diamonds. Dr. Reed emerged an hour later, her face set in a grim professional mask. "I've documented 43 separate injuries in various stages of healing, 3 partially healed rib fractures, and clear clinical signs of long-term malnutrition and dehydration. I've taken hair and blood samples and will rush the toxicology screen with a court order." "How soon can we get the results?" Marcus asked. 72 hours, maybe less." After she left, Marcus prepared to leave. "Try to get some rest, both of you. Tomorrow we build our war chest. By the end of this week, we'll have enough ammunition to level them." "What's the first strategic move?" I asked. "We wait for the tox screen. If it comes back positive for a sedative, that's our silver bullet. The prenup dies instantly, and their entire house of cards comes tumbling down." That night, for the first time in a decade, Clara hugged me. A real hug, her arms wrapping around me tightly. I held my daughter and felt her heart beating against mine, a steady, living rhythm I thought I might never feel again. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered into my shoulder. "You're here now," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're safe. That's all that matters." The next 3 days were a strange limbo of tension and healing. We ate room service, watched old movies, and talked for hours. Clara slept for 12 hours a night, her body and soul finally able to rest without fear. My tech team, working with Clara, accessed her old cloud account and found a treasure trove of evidence. Screenshots of Carter's cruel texts, photos he'd sent to his friends of her in the apron, even a short, shaky video he'd taken of her scrubbing the floor while he taunted her off camera. Each piece of evidence was another nail in their coffin. On the 3rd day, Marcus called. His voice was grimly, icily triumphant. "We got it. Rohypnol. Clear, undeniable traces in her hair follicles, concentrated at a level consistent with a significant oral dose administered approximately 5 years ago, give or take a few weeks." I closed my eyes, a wave of cold, hard vindication washing over me. So we have them. We have them dead to rights. I'm filing the paperwork this afternoon. Emergency motion to void the prenup and an immediate restraining order against Carter and Beatrice. And Eleanor, I'm hand-delivering a settlement offer to their lawyer. What are the terms? Full and immediate restoration of all Clara's original assets plus interest, $10 million in damages for pain and suffering, a public written apology to be printed in the Oregonian. I had missed the whole of her 20s, that precious, formative decade of self-discovery. I had told myself it was for a good reason, for the work, for the legacy I was building. But as the miles closed between us, that justification felt thin and brittle, a pathetic excuse. What good was a legacy if the person you were building it for was lost? My name is Eleanor Vance, and a permanent, binding, no-contact order. They have 48 hours to accept, or we go public with everything and file criminal charges for drugging, false imprisonment, and felony assault. They'll never agree to the public apology, I said. Their pride won't allow it. Probably not, he conceded. but it gives them one chance to avoid utter and complete ruin before we bring the sky down on their heads. The meeting was set for the next day at Marcus's downtown office, a sleek, modern space with panoramic views of the very city the Sterlings thought they owned. Clara insisted on being there. "I'm not hiding anymore," she said, a new hardness in her voice I had never heard before. "I want to look them in the eye when their world ends." We dressed for battle. I wore a charcoal gray power suit that radiated authority. Clara wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, the fading bruises on her arms deliberately visible, a silent testament to their crimes. We sat on one side of a massive mahogany conference table. At precisely 2 p.m., on they arrived. Beatrice in a stark white suit, a queen entering a peasant's hovel. Carter looking pale and sweaty in a suit that suddenly seemed too big for him. And their lawyer, Lawrence Finch, a silver-haired shark from Portland's most notorious corporate law firm. Finch picked up the settlement offer Marcus had placed on the table and began to read. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the rustle of paper. Finally, he closed the folder with a soft thud. "This is an impressive work of fiction, Marcus." "Those are documented facts, Lawrence," Marcus replied coolly, sliding another, thicker folder across the polished table. "You might want to look at Exhibit A." Finch opened it. His eyes widened slightly as he looked at the clinical, graphic medical photos of Clara's injuries. "Clara has always been clumsy," Beatrice said, her voice like ice. "These bruises match your son's handprints exactly," Marcus countered without missing a beat. "We had a forensic pattern analyst confirm it." He then used a remote to project a series of text messages onto a large screen on the wall. Carter's threats, his Cinderella jokes, his cruel orders. Then came the photos he'd sent to his friends. Clara in the apron, her face streaked with tears. Clara with a fresh black eye, looking down at the floor in shame. "Where did you get those?" Carter demanded, his voice cracking, his composure finally breaking. "The cloud is a wonderful thing," Marcus said pleasantly. "You took her phone, but you never thought to disable the automatic sync to her private account." Beatrice stood up abruptly. "This is harassment. We are leaving." "Sit down," Marcus said, his voice quiet but carrying the unyielding weight of command. Beatrice, for the first time in her life, looked uncertain. She sat. "We haven't gotten to the best part." He slid the final folder across the table. "Toxicology report from OHSU Forensics Lab. Clear traces of Rohypnol, administered on her wedding day, just before she signed your fraudulent contracts." The color drained from Lawrence Finch's face. He began whispering urgently to Beatrice, his professional composure gone. "Under Oregon law," Marcus continued, his voice like a death knell, "any contract signed under such circumstances is null and void. The prenup is worthless. But that's just the civil liability. Criminally, we're looking at drugging a victim to facilitate a crime, false imprisonment, felony assault. My office has already prepared the criminal complaint. I'm 63 years old, and 3 months ago I signed the papers that sold my last tech consultancy in Hong Kong. The final tally was just north of $800 million, a figure so vast it felt like a fantasy, a number that belonged to someone else's life, someone far more important than a scrappy girl from the wrong side of the tracks in Eugene. One phone call to this district attorney, and your son goes to prison for a very long time. You, Beatrice, as an accessory before and after the fact. You can't prove, Carter started, his voice a pathetic bleat. We can prove everything. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound cracking like a gunshot in the silent room. I stood and walked slowly around the table until I was standing directly in front of Beatrice, looking down at her. You tortured my daughter for 5 years. You beat her, you starved her, you humiliated her. You thought your name and your money made you gods. But I have more money, and I will spend every last cent to see you in a prison cell wearing an orange jumpsuit. 48 hours, Marcus said calmly, his gaze fixed on Lawrence Finch. After that, all bets are off. The clock is ticking. We left them sitting in stunned, suffocating silence. In the elevator, Clara began to laugh, a sound of pure, unadulterated, liberating relief. Did you see their faces? They actually looked scared. They should be, Marcus said, a grim smile on his face. They're about to lose everything. 47 hours passed with no response. They were calling our bluff, gathering their own forces. They're preparing for war, I told Marcus on the phone. They think they can still crush us. Then we give it to them. I made a call to an old contact, a Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist I knew at the Oregonian. I sent her everything's in a secure, encrypted file. The photos, the medical report, the toxicology results, the texts, everything. The next morning, the story exploded. It was the front-page headline, above the fold, in bold 2-inch-high letters. Portland's royal family accused of torture. The story was brutal, factual, and damning. The photos of the apron, the details from the medical report, the tox screen results, it was all there for the world to see. Social media erupted. Sterling abuse was trending worldwide within an hour. Protesters gathered outside the Sterling Industries headquarters downtown. The company's stock plummeted 20% in a single day of trading. The Sterlings issued a furious denial through their lawyer, calling the claims baseless and a vicious extortion attempt, but no one believed them. The evidence was too overwhelming. Then, at 11:47 p.m. that night, the fire alarm in our hotel shrieked to life, a piercing, terrifying sound. I smelled smoke and gasoline. "Mom, what's happening?" Clara screamed, bolting upright in bed. "Get dressed, now!" I grabbed her, my heart hammering against my ribs, and we ran for the emergency stairs, joining a panicked flood of guests in robes and pajamas. Down in the lobby, surrounded by fire trucks and flashing lights, a fire marshal confirmed my deepest fears. It was arson. They found an accelerant in a utility closet directly across the hall from our suite. Security footage showed a man in a baseball cap and a hoodie forcing the closet door. It took Marcus's private investigator less than 3 hours to trace the shell company a car registered to the man belonged to. The trail led directly back to a Sterling family trust. They had tried to kill us. By dawn, the police had a suspect. Leo Gibbs, a former Sterling security contractor with a criminal record. He confessed within 2 hours. Carter Sterling had paid him $50,000 to scare them by setting a small fire. An arrest warrant was issued immediately. We watched on a live television newsfeed on Marcus's laptop as police cars, sirens screaming, swarmed the Sterling mansion. They brought Carter out in handcuffs, his face a mask of shocked disbelief. Yet sitting in the back of that cab, clutching a purse full of regret and unspoken apologies, I felt utterly, hopelessly destitute. The money meant nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the time I had lost. The houses grew more opulent the deeper we drove into the Laurelhurst neighborhood. When Beatrice ran out of the house, screaming at the officers and then trying to bribe them on camera to release her son, they arrested her too, accessory to attempted murder and bribery of a public official. At the emergency bail hearing that afternoon, the judge took one look at the mountain of evidence and the new charges and denied bail for both of them. As we left the courthouse, surrounded by a mob of reporters, Lawrence Finch ran up to us, his face gray and defeated. "My clients will accept the settlement, all terms. The public apology, the money, everything." "Too late, Lawrence," Marcus said coldly, shielding us from the cameras. "This is a criminal matter now. The DA's office is taking over. Your settlement offer is irrelevant." 6 months later, the trial was over. It wasn't even close. Carter was sentenced to 10 years in state prison for a battery of charges, including conspiracy to commit arson and attempted murder. Beatrice got 5 years. The civil settlement, decided by a jury that clearly despised them, awarded Clara $12 million. But more than the money, Clara was healing. She was in intensive therapy, had regained a healthy weight, and her eyes, once haunted, now sparkled with life again. She had even started teaching kindergarten again at a small private school in a nearby town, finding joy in the simple things once more. I bought a house down the street from her new apartment. One evening, she came over for our weekly dinner, grinning from ear to ear. "I got asked out," she said, her cheeks flushing. "A teacher at my school. His name is Julian. He's kind and funny, and he brings me coffee every morning." I said yes. We ate apple pie and talked about second chances and the surprising resilience of the human spirit. Later that night, I stood looking out at the city lights, the guilt of my lost decade with her still a quiet ache in my heart. I couldn't get that time back, but I had used the resources I'd spent that time building to give her a future, to give her life back. The next day, I made a call to my wealth manager. By morning, I had established a new nonprofit organization, the Phoenix Fund, dedicated to providing elite legal and financial resources for survivors of domestic abuse trapped in powerful, influential families. 2 years later, Clara runs the foundation full-time. I provide the funding. We've helped 43 women escape their cages, providing them with safe houses, top-tier lawyers, and the resources to rebuild their lives. We turned our pain into a shield for others. Love doesn't come with bruises or locks on the door. It doesn't put you in an apron and call you property. It doesn't try to shrink you until you disappear. If you recognize your own story and my daughter's, please know you are not alone and you are not worthless. You are a survivor, and there are people ready to help you fight back. You just have to take the first terrifying step. Sprawling estates sat behind imposing wrought iron gates, their immaculate lawns manicured with geometric precision. Luxury sedans, polished to a mirror shine, gleamed in wide circular driveways. This was the world Clara had married into. A world of old money and established power, a world I had always been wary of, a world that seemed to value lineage over character, appearance over substance. That one, I said, my voice tight and strained, pointing to a grand brick Tudor at the very end of a quiet, tree-canopied cul-de-sac. It was set back from the road, a fortress of quiet wealth. The driver eased the car to the curb with a soft crunch of tires on gravel. I paid him, my hand still shaking as I fumbled with my wallet, adding a tip that made his eyes widen in surprise. I stepped out onto the pristine sidewalk, the Oregon sun feeling warm on my face, a gentle, welcoming touch that felt entirely at odds with the knot of anxiety in my stomach. It was a perfect house. White trim, a slate roof that must have cost a fortune, flower beds overflowing with vibrant summer blossoms, roses, hydrangeas, lavender. It was everything Clara had described in our stilted, carefully managed video calls. This was supposed to be a joyous reunion, the culmination of a decade of planning. I'd spent months orchestrating my return, liquidating assets, severing ties with my life overseas. I'd even purchased a beautiful brownstone just a few blocks away, a secret I was bursting to share with her, a tangible symbol of my intent. I wasn't just visiting. I was finally coming home. For good. I walked up the bluestone path, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, and rang the bell, the cheerful, melodic chime echoing the desperate hammering in my chest. I followed it, my expensive leather heels, chosen for a triumphant reunion, sinking into a plush Persian runner that muffled their sound, a carpet so thick it felt like walking on a bed of moss. I passed a living room that looked untouched by human hands, a museum piece of cream-colored sofas and polished mahogany, where even the dust motes seemed afraid to settle. I waited, smoothing the front of my silk blouse, trying to compose myself. Silence. The house remained still, impassive, a silent, beautiful sentinel. I rang again, holding the button down a little longer this time, a flicker of irritation mixing with my nerves. Still nothing. A prickle of unease, cold and sharp, ran down my spine. On instinct, a gut feeling honed by years of high-stakes business deals, I reached out and tried the ornate brass handle. It turned, unlocked. My stomach clenched into a hard knot, but a force stronger than etiquette, a primal maternal instinct that had lain dormant for too long, pulled me inside. "Clara, honey. It's Mom!" My voice sounded small and hollow in the cavernous space, swallowed by the sheer volume of the foyer. The foyer was a cathedral of marble and pale cream wallpaper, a massive crystal chandelier glittering above like a frozen waterfall. Everything was polished to a mirror shine, sterile and cold and utterly impersonal. It felt less like a home and more like a showroom, a stage set for a life that was never actually lived. That's when I heard it, that desperate, rhythmic scrubbing. I left my suitcases by the door, an unspoken claim of territory, and followed the sound. My heels clicked on the polished hardwood floors, each step an intrusion in the heavy oppressive silence. The kitchen was an architectural marvel of stainless steel and gleaming marble, with a central island the size of a small boat. And there, in the middle of it all, was my daughter. On her hands and knees. My heart stopped. My brain simply refused to process the image before me. This couldn't be my Clara. My Clara was vibrant. She was brilliant. She was full of fire. This creature on the floor was a pale imitation, a wraith. Clara's hair, once a cascade of honey-blonde silk she had been so proud of, hung in greasy, unwashed strings. She was dressed in stained gray sweatpants and a t-shirt so worn it was nearly transparent, and over it all, that filthy, degrading apron. But it was her arms that stole my breath. Oh God, her arms. Clusters of dark, angry bruises marred her forearms, some fresh and violently purple, others fading to a sickly, mottled yellow-green. They were the shape of fingers, of a powerful, cruel grip. She scrubbed at the immaculate tile with a small, stiff-bristled brush, her movements robotic and repetitive, her shoulders hunched in a permanent cringe of defeat, as if expecting a blow at any moment. Her world had been reduced to this 4-foot square of tile, this single, meaningless task. Clara. My voice was a strangled whisper, barely audible even to myself. Her head snapped up. The brush clattered from her limp hand, the sound echoing unnaturally in the vast, silent kitchen. Her face. I barely recognized her. It was gaunt, her cheekbones sharp, cruel angles under translucent, waxy skin. The dark circles beneath her eyes were so deep they looked like twin bruises. Her lips were cracked and pale, a small, scabbed cut on the bottom one. She must have lost 40 pounds. The lively, brilliant, laughing young woman I remembered was gone, replaced by this haunted, terrified wraith. Mom. The word was a dry, rasping whisper, a sound of disbelief and absolute terror. My purse slipped from my shoulder and hit the floor with a dull, heavy thud. What is this? I asked, my voice trembling, my mind reeling, trying to connect the vibrant young woman on my video calls with the broken creature before me. The carefully applied makeup, the forced smiles, it was all a lie. A lie I had been too far away, too self-absorbed to see. I moved through a formal dining room set for a banquet that would never happen, the crystal goblets on the vast, gleaming table catching the afternoon light and fracturing it into 1,000 tiny mocking rainbows. She scrambled to her feet, swaying unsteadily. Her eyes, wide with a primal terror, darted towards the hallway as if expecting a monster to appear at any moment. You can't be here. She stumbled towards me, her hands outstretched, then froze, a new wave of panic washing over her face as she seemed to remember something. You have to leave. Now, Mom. Please. I'm not going anywhere. I reached for her, wanting to pull her into my arms, to shield her from whatever horrors lived in this pristine, perfect house. But she flinched back, her whole body recoiling with an involuntary jerk, her eyes shutting tight as if she expected a blow. That single, reflexive gesture shattered what was left of my composure. Please, she begged, hot tears carving clean tracks through the grime on her cheeks. If they find you here, they'll be so angry. If who finds me here? Carter? His family? I demanded, my voice rising, sharp with a fury I hadn't felt in years. She pressed her trembling hands to her face, a gesture of pure, abject despair. Her fingernails were broken, bitten down to the quick, the cuticles raw and dirty. These were not the hands of a woman married to one of Portland's wealthiest, most prominent families. They were the hands of a laborer, of a servant. Talk to me, Clara. My voice was softer now, pleading, my anger momentarily replaced by a wave of overwhelming grief. Tell me what's happening. I can't, she sobbed, backing away from me until she hit the corner of the marble island like a trapped animal. You don't understand. I have to finish the floors before Beatrice gets home. She checks the grout lines. If I don't, who in God's name is Beatrice? The name was unfamiliar. a new piece in a puzzle I couldn't begin to comprehend. Carter's mother. Clara's entire body was trembling now, a violent, uncontrollable shiver. She inspects everything, every single day. If it's not perfect, she... Her hand instinctively went to her side, pressing against her ribs as if to soothe an old familiar pain. A cold, murderous rage, unlike anything I had ever felt in my 63 years, washed over me. It was so potent, so absolute, that my vision swam with red for a moment. This was not the righteous anger of a boardroom battle. This was something primal, visceral. "Show me," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, each word a chip of ice. "Mom, no, it's nothing. Show me. Now." It wasn't a request. It was a command forged in the crucible of my newfound fury. With shaking, hesitant hands, Clara lifted the hem of her worn t-shirt. A fresh mosaic of bruises, a sickening tapestry of purples and blues covered her ribcage and stomach. Some were mottled and blurred, but others were horribly, undeniably distinct. The clear imprints of fingers, a hand that had gripped and squeezed my daughter's flesh with brutal, punishing force. I felt the bile rise in my throat. "How long?" I whispered, my voice thick with horror. "How long has this been happening?" She let the shirt fall, her gaze fixed on the spotless tile floor, unable to meet my eyes. "It started after the wedding. Little things, at first. Beatrice said I needed to learn how to manage a proper household. She said I wasn't raised right, that I didn't know how to serve a family of their stature. 'You were a beloved first-grade teacher,' I said, my voice breaking. 'You shaped young minds. You were brilliant. You were changing the world one child at a time.' Not anymore." A bitter, broken sound escaped her lips, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. "They made me quit," said a sterling wife doesn't work. The air, thick with the cloying scent of lemon polish, couldn't quite mask a sharper, more astringent chemical smell that burned the back of my throat, the smell of industrial-grade cleaner, of obsession. Then I saw her. On her hands and knees in a kitchen built for a 5-star chef, a cavern of stainless steel and Italian marble, was my daughter, Clara. "But I don't get to be a wife." She gestured numbly at the degrading apron, the bucket of murky water, the scrub brush lying on the floor. "I'm this. And Carter? Where's my son-in-law in all of this?" I spat the title like a curse, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Clara's face crumpled completely. "He thinks it's a game. A joke. He calls me Cinderella, sometimes. Sometimes when his friends are over, he makes me serve them drinks. Barefoot. In this apron. They laugh at me. They take pictures." She choked on a sob, unable to finish. She didn't have to. The image was burned into my mind, a brand of shame and rage. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling with the smooth, cold glass. "What are you doing?" Panic seized her voice, sharp and high. "Don't, Mom, please. Calling the police." "No!" She lunged, grabbing my wrist with a grip so frail and weak it was startling. "You can't. It'll only make it worse. The Sterlings know everyone in this city. Judges, the chief of police, politicians. I tried once, Mom. A year ago. I tried to tell a neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She's always been so kind. The next day, Beatrice locked me in the wine cellar for 3 days. No food. Just a single bottle of water each day. The phone nearly slipped from my grasp. The casual cruelty of it, the premeditated torture, was beyond my comprehension. "You are leaving with me. Right now." "I can't. They have everything." She swallowed hard, the sound painful and dry. "They had me sign papers, right after the wedding. My entire inheritance from Dad, my savings, the car you bought me for graduation, it's all in Carter's name. My bank accounts were closed. They told me if I ever tried to leave, their lawyers would destroy me. Beatrice said she'd make sure I ended up on the street, that she would tell everyone I was mentally unstable, that no one would ever believe me over them. Stop!" I took her by the shoulders, my touch as gentle as I could manage, my heart aching at how fragile she felt beneath my hands, like a bird with a broken wing. Listen to me. I have money, real money, more than the Sterlings have ever dreamed of. And I have lawyers, the kind of lawyers who eat men like them for breakfast and pick their teeth with the bones. A fragile, hesitant flicker of hope lit her eyes, only to be extinguished a moment later. You don't know them, Mom. You don't know what they're capable of. And they, I said, my voice hardening into steel, have no idea what I am capable of. A car door slammed outside, the sound sharp and final. Clara went sheet white, her eyes widening in pure terror. That's them. That's Carter's car. Mom, you have to hide. In the pantry. Please, if he finds you here, I'm not hiding from anyone. Mom! Her voice was a desperate, pleading shriek. The front door opened. The sound of confident footsteps echoed in the marble foyer, one heavy set, one lighter, clicking heel. A woman's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the air. Clara, why isn't the roast in the oven? I told you specifically we needed it in by 4 o'clock. A man's voice followed, dripping with an arrogant, condescending amusement. She's probably been sitting on her worthless behind all day, Mother. Lazy thing. Clara's fingers dug into my arm, her whole body shaking. Please, Mom, don't make it worse for me. I looked at my daughter, at the bruises marring her skin, the abject terror in her eyes, the way her spirit had been systematically broken and ground into dust. Then I looked towards the hallway where the footsteps grew closer, bolder. Something inside me, a dam of grief and guilt and regret built over 10 years of absence, finally shattered, unleashing a tidal wave of protective fury. My breath caught, a painful, physical knot tightening in my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. Her beautiful blonde hair, the hair I had brushed and braided 1,000 times when she was a little girl, the hair that had shone like spun gold in the summer sun, was lank and greasy, clinging to her scalp in dark, unhappy strings. Go upstairs, I told Clara, my voice firm, leaving no room for argument. Pack a small bag, just the essentials. Your wallet, your phone if you still have it, anything sentimental. Go now. But Mom, now! She hesitated for a split second, torn between a lifetime of conditioned fear and a nascent, flickering spark of defiance. Then she turned and ran. I heard her feet pounding on the grand staircase just as a woman swept into the kitchen. Beatrice Sterling was exactly as I'd imagined, and yet somehow worse. Her blonde hair was a sculpted, immovable helmet, sprayed into submission. She wore a Chanel pantsuit that cost more than my first apartment, the fabric a pristine, unforgiving white. Diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. She might have been 60, but her face was a smooth, frozen mask of injectables and fillers, her expression one of permanent, ingrained disdain. She stopped short when she saw me, her pale blue eyes narrowing into slits. Who are you? Behind her, Carter appeared, a perfect specimen of generational entitlement. He was tall and handsome in that generic country club way, a pastel polo shirt, pressed khakis, a heavy gold watch on his wrist. For a split second, a flicker of something ugly, panic maybe, or guilt, crossed his face before he smoothed it over with a practiced smirk. I asked you a question, Beatrice said, her voice dripping with ice. I allowed myself a small, cold smile. I'm Eleanor Vance, Clara's mother. Well, Beatrice's thin lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. How unexpected. Clara didn't mention you were visiting. That's because she didn't know. It was a surprise, I said, crossing my arms over my chest, my posture a deliberate challenge. Although I must say I'm the one who's been surprised. I don't know what you mean. Her denial was flat, immediate, rehearsed. Don't you? We stared at each other across the gleaming marble island, the air thick with unspoken violence. I saw the scrub brush and the bucket of dirty water near her expensive shoes and felt a fresh surge of rage. Perhaps you should call before dropping in next time, Carter said, moving to stand slightly behind his mother's shoulder, a classic beta male power move. This is a private residence. Funny, the door was unlocked, and I was under the impression this was my daughter's home too. My eyes flickered to the apron Clara had dropped on the floor. Or is she just staff? Your daughter is perfectly fine, Beatrice said, each word a carefully enunciated insult. She is merely adjusting to married life and learning her place. A lesson you clearly failed to teach her. Her place. The two words hung in the air like a toxin, vile and suffocating. Her place? You mean on her hands and knees, scrubbing your floors until her hands are raw? Wearing an apron that labels her as your property? We have standards in this family, Mrs. Vance, standards of decorum and duty that someone like you couldn't possibly understand. I saw the bruises on her arms, on her ribs. A dead, heavy silence fell. Carter shifted his weight uneasily, his smirk faltering. Beatrice's expression remained frozen, but I saw a flicker of cold calculation in her eyes. I have no idea what you're implying, she said smoothly. But if Clara has been spinning tales of woe, oh, she didn't have to say a word. I have eyes. Clara is clumsy, Carter cut in, his voice taking on a harder, bullying edge. Always has been. Bumps into furniture. Isn't that right, Mother? Her frame was so shockingly thin that the stained, oversized apron she wore hung on her like a shroud, its ties cinched cruelly tight around a waist I could have circled with my two hands. And the words printed on that apron, in stark, institutional black letters that seemed to scream in the silent kitchen, made my world tilt violently on its axis. Property of the Sterling family. Precisely, Beatrice smoothed the lapel of her immaculate jacket. And frankly, Mrs. Vance, your accusations are insulting. We have given Clara everything a woman could possibly desire. A beautiful home, financial security, a place in one of Portland's most respected families. You've given her a cage? I shot back. A beautifully decorated, very expensive cage. Beatrice's smile turned predatory, a shark smelling blood in the water. Bold words from a woman who abandoned her own child for a decade to chase profits on the other side of the world. Where were you when she needed a mother? When she was planning her wedding? When she was learning to be a wife? You weren't here. The blow landed. A sharp, painful jab to my deepest insecurities. She was right. And she knew it. The guilt I had carried for 10 years threatened to choke me. You're right, I said, my voice quiet but steady, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. I wasn't here, but I am now. How lovely for you. Beatrice glanced at her son, a silent command passing between them. Carter, be a dear and show Mrs. Vance the door. I'm sure she can find a suitable hotel for her visit. Actually, I can't be shown the door. Excuse me? Beatrice's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. I'm moving back to Portland, permanently. And my daughter is coming with me. Carter let out a short, ugly bark of a laugh. Clara's not going anywhere. She's my wife. She signed a prenuptial agreement, a very thorough one. She knows exactly what happens if she tries to leave. Let me guess, I said, my voice dripping with scorn. You take everything she ever had. You ruin her reputation. You leave her with absolutely nothing. You're a smarter woman than you look, Beatrice purred, enjoying her perceived victory. You understand how the world works. That prenup won't be worth the paper it's printed on in court. Not with credible, documented evidence of systemic abuse. Evidence? Beatrice's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. What evidence? Bruises fade, Mrs. Vance. Memories are unreliable. And who do you imagine any judge in this city would believe? A troubled, clumsy girl with a history of emotional instability? Or the Sterlings? Our family practically built this city. You really believe your name is a shield, don't you? That it makes you untouchable? It always has been. I pulled my phone out again. This time, I navigated to the camera app and hit the red record button. A small red dot glowed in the corner of the screen. What do you think you're doing? Carter demanded, taking a menacing step forward. Say it again, I invited, my voice calm and even. About how bruises fade, about how no one would ever believe her, about her emotional instability. It would be very useful for the court record. Give me that phone. He lunged for it. I stepped back smoothly, keeping the phone aimed at his face. Touch me and I'll add assault to the list of charges. You're in your own home, being recorded while you admit to and attempt to cover up the abuse of my daughter. How do you think that will look?" Beatrice held up a hand, a silent, sharp command. Carter froze like a well-trained dog, his face flushed with impotent rage. Her face had become a mask of cold fury. "You have nothing," she said, her voice low and venomous. "And you're forgetting the most important rule of the game." "And what's that?" "Money," she hissed. "Real money. The kind that makes problems like you disappear. How much did you make with your little businesses abroad, Mrs. Vance? A few million? That's adorable. We have generational wealth. Billions." Then I saw her arms. They were covered in a horrifying constellation of purple and yellowing bruises, marks that marred the pale, almost translucent skin of her forearms. "Actually," I said, letting the words land with the satisfying weight of a sledgehammer, "I have 800 million, give or take. Liquid. Sitting in American bank accounts, ready to be deployed." The number detonated in the silent kitchen. Beatrice's left eyelid twitched, an infinitesimal crack in her porcelain facade. Carter's mouth fell open in a slack-jawed expression of pure shock. "I made it in Hong Kong," I continued conversationally, pressing my advantage. "Corporate restructuring, tech investments, a few lucky bets on emergent AI. Sold my last 2 firms 3 months ago. The money is clean, legal, and ready to fund the most vicious, unrelenting legal battle this city has ever seen. I will hire every top litigator in the state. I will hire private investigators to dig into every dirty little secret your family has ever had. I will fund a media campaign that will make the name Sterling synonymous with monster." I took a step towards her. She didn't retreat, but I saw her shoulders tense. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice low and clear. "My daughter is walking out of this house with me today. She will file for divorce. We will sue you for physical, emotional, and financial damages. We will take that fraudulent prenup and have a judge tear it to shreds. And we will ensure that every single person in Portland, from the governor to the grocery clerk, knows exactly what kind of monsters the Sterling family truly are." "You're bluffing," she whispered, the bravado gone from her voice. "Try me." Footsteps on the stairs. Clara appeared in the doorway, a small backpack slung over one shoulder. Her face was tear-streaked and pale, but for the first time since I arrived, her chin was high, her jaw set with a newfound resolve. "I'm ready, Mom." Carter started towards her, his face a storm of confusion and rage. "You're not serious? Don't." I moved between them, a human shield. "Don't you dare touch her again, ever. She's my wife," he sputtered, his voice cracking with disbelief. "She is a human being you have tortured," I corrected him, my voice like ice. I looked directly at Beatrice, meeting her burning gaze without flinching. "Both of you. And the torture ends today." "You will regret this," Beatrice snarled, her voice a low, vicious threat. "We will bury you. Your reputation, your money, everything. By the time we're done, you'll wish you'd never set foot in this city again." "You can certainly try." I took Clara's hand. It was trembling, but her fingers curled around mine and squeezed with surprising strength. We walked past Carter's sputtering rage, past Beatrice with her frozen face and burning eyes, through the perfect, soulless house that had been my daughter's prison. As the heavy front door clicked shut behind us, it felt like the closing of a tomb, a gateway to freedom. The late afternoon sun was warm on our faces. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and roses and liberation. Clara stopped on the perfectly manicured lawn and took a deep, shuddering breath, the first real breath she'd taken in 5 years. "What happens now?" she whispered, her voice fragile. I looked at my daughter. She was broken and terrified and emaciated, but she was standing, and she had walked out of that house on her own 2 feet. She was a survivor. "Now," I said, feeling a lifetime of purpose settle in my soul, "we make them pay." The presidential suite at the Benson Hotel felt like another world, a sanctuary perched high above the city. 2 bedrooms, a sprawling living area with a baby grand piano in the corner, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city that had, until today, belonged to the Sterlings. My beautiful, vibrant daughter, the girl who had graduated summa cum laude from Reed College, the girl whose laughter could fill a room and whose spirit was a blazing bonfire, was a ghost, a hollowed-out shell of herself, scrubbing a floor that was already spotlessly, obsessively clean. I paid for a month up front with a black card that never got declined, the concierge not even blinking at the request. Clara stood in the center of the room, clutching her small backpack like a life raft in a stormy sea. She looked lost, overwhelmed by the sudden opulence, the sudden freedom. She was like a deep-sea fish brought too quickly to the surface, shocked by the light and the lack of pressure. "Take a long, hot shower," I told her gently, my voice softer than it had been all afternoon. "Use all the soap, all the little bottles. Use all the towels. I'll order room service." She nodded, a ghost of herself, and disappeared into the marble-clad master bathroom. A moment later I heard the water running, a powerful, hissing spray, followed by the sound she'd been holding back for years, deep, wrenching sobs of grief and release that tore through me. I collapsed onto a plush velvet sofa, the carefully constructed dam of my own emotions finally breaking, and let my own silent tears fall, tears for the years I'd lost, for the pain I hadn't seen, for the daughter I had almost failed completely. I ordered one of everything. Steaks, pastas, decadent salads, every single dessert on the menu, a feast, a celebration, an act of defiance. When the cart arrived, laden with silver-domed platters, Clara emerged in a thick white hotel robe, her skin scrubbed pink, her wet hair wrapped in a towel. She sat at the dining table and simply stared at the cornucopia of food. "I'm not supposed to eat this much," she said, her voice small and conditioned. "Beatrice, she limited my meals. She weighed me every morning. If I gained even a pound—" "She can't hurt you anymore," I said firmly, lifting a silver cover to reveal a perfectly cooked filet mignon. "Eat whatever you want, as much as you want. You are safe now." She picked up a fork, her hand trembling so much it was difficult for her to spear a piece of pasta. She chewed slowly, deliberately, as if reintroducing her body to the concept of nourishment, without fear, without punishment. "When did it start?" I asked softly, keeping my voice even, trying not to betray the storm of rage and guilt inside me. "The control. The day of the wedding," she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. 5 years ago. You couldn't make it. You were closing that big merger in Singapore." The familiar, gut-wrenching guilt twisted in my stomach like a knife. "Clara, I am so sorry." "Don't." She held up a hand, stopping me. "I understood. Really. I was proud of you, and Carter seemed so perfect back then. Charming, successful, handsome. The Sterling name meant everything in Portland. I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world." She took another bite of pasta, then another, her appetite slowly, cautiously returning. "We were married at their estate. A huge affair, 300 guests. Beatrice planned it all, of course. After the ceremony, before the reception, she pulled me into a private study, said there was some last-minute paperwork from the city. Carter was there, and his father, and 2 lawyers I'd never seen before. They put a mountain of papers in front of me and told me to sign." Her hands began to shake again, and she put her fork down. I tried to read them, but Beatrice kept rushing me, saying the guests were waiting, that it was rude. Carter kept handing me champagne, refilling my glass before it was even empty. I felt so dizzy. My head was fuzzy, my vision blurred, and I knew in that instant, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone marrow, that my surprise visit home, meant to be a celebration of reunion and reconciliation, had just become a declaration of war. The taxi had smelled of artificial vanilla from a pine tree-shaped air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror, and old, stale cigarette smoke embedded deep in the upholstery. I remember thinking the print was swimming on the page. My blood ran cold. "They drugged you." "I don't know for sure. I just know I signed everything. The prenup, power of attorney documents, papers that transferred my inheritance from Dad, my car title. Everything became his property, under his complete control. That's illegal. That's coercion and fraud. I know that now. But by the time the fog cleared the next morning and I realized what I'd done, it was too late. I was his. The first year wasn't all bad. It was subtle. Beatrice was a constant presence, criticizing everything. My clothes weren't sophisticated enough. My friends were too middle class. The way I decorated was tacky. Nothing was ever good enough. When did it get physical? I asked, dreading the answer. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her ribs. About 8 months in, I complained to a neighbor, an old friend from college, that I was unhappy. Just venting, you know? Word must have gotten back to Beatrice. That night she came to the house alone. She was furious. She dragged me down to the wine cellar. Fresh tears streamed down her face, silent and hot. She locked me in there for 3 days. It was just a concrete floor and a single bare bulb. Once a day she'd unlock the door, bring a bottle of water, and lecture me on my disloyalty, on my place. And Carter? He knew. He let her do it. When she finally let me out, he was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the paper. He didn't even look up. He just said, "Hope you learned your lesson, Cinderella." That's when the nicknames started. The word was poison in my mouth. She nodded, misery etched on her beautiful, gaunt face. After that, it was a constant slide. They made me quit my job teaching. I wasn't allowed to see my old friends. I became their servant. Beatrice would invent cleaning tasks, things that were already clean, just to watch me work. The apron was a birthday gift last year. Carter thought it was hilarious. He started making his friends come over just to watch me serve them drinks barefoot. They'd post pictures online with captions like, "Know your place," or "Property of Carter." She stopped, lifting the sleeve of her robe slightly to show me a thin, white, puckered scar on her side. If I refused, Carter would... He pushed me into the corner of the kitchen counter once. It split the skin open. He drove me to the ER himself and told the doctor I'd tripped while cleaning. He was so charming, so concerned. The doctor believed him completely. "I can't breathe," I whispered, the horror of it suffocating me, a physical pressure on my chest. "I thought about running so many times," Clara whispered, her voice cracking. "But they had everything. My money, my car, my past. They convinced me I was worthless, that I'd end up homeless and alone, that everyone would think I was crazy. And Mom, I believed them. Look at me. I'm not the daughter you raised. I'm nothing." "Stop." I moved my chair beside hers, taking her cold hands in mine. "You are everything. You are a survivor. You are brave and strong, and you endured hell. And I swear to you, on my life, they will pay for every single tear, every bruise, every moment of fear." "How? They're the Sterlings. They own this city. They don't own me." A sharp, authoritative knock on the suite door made us both jump. Clara flinched, fear instantly returning to her eyes. "Who is it?" she breathed. I moved to the door and checked the peephole. A tall, impeccably dressed man in a dark suit stood in the hall, holding a sleek leather briefcase. I felt a wave of relief. I opened the door, leaving the security chain in place. "Mrs. Vance?" "My name is Marcus Thorne. You called me." I undid the chain and let him in. Marcus Thorne was exactly as I remembered from our corporate battles in Hong Kong 10 years ago.